From 1989 to 2013, the United States spent 6 times more on jails than on higher education. States are now building more prisons than schools. How do black children escape the school to prison pipeline? How is remote learning and education amid a global pandemic affecting America's children? And what can be done to ensure equity in education? This year, to celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. King, the Chicago Defender wanted to know what Dr. King's vision looks like today. We reached out to community leaders, activists, advocates, and experts to ask the question, what does social justice look like now? Today, we speak with Michael Phillips about what social justice looks like within the American education system. Michael Phillips is an education reform expert, pastor, and chief engagement officer for the T.D. Jakes Foundation. In his new book, Wrong Lanes Have Right Turns, Michael Phillips details through his own experience the modern crisis of education and mass incarceration. Today, with the Chicago Defender, he discusses the power of educators in providing advocacy, resources, knowledge, and opportunities that can have a transformational effect in the lives of our children. Yes, I wanted to start with, how does today's education system contribute to the increase in mass incarceration?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's an honor to be with you today. I think fundamentally, we have to consider strongly that our education system, as we know it, was never truly built to educate all children. So that's the first problem. It was really modeled after a inequitable model that was conditioning people for an industrial period. And it really did not speak to the specificity of unique potential and purpose. And so that's part of the problem. Secondly, at a fundamental level, the structure of the system, in most cases, in most places, even though we're seeing some changes today, have real issues with disciplinary practices that are typically zero tolerance. So if a child acts up, something happens, these type of policies that suggest we have zero tolerance for any type of violence or anything like that, which is understandable, but it's usually not mediated well. And you find a lot of kids being suspended or disciplined in that way, which means they're being penalized to not be back in community. And so they're out of school. And oftentimes that puts them directly in front of the criminal justice system if their charge is filed. So if there's a scuffle between two kids, if Tyrone pushes Johnny or Johnny pushes Tyrone, that sort of thing, that's how it begins. That's how it starts. And so zero tolerance policies in themselves doesn't work. And so today we need more restorative practices within our schools.
You mentioned it in your book. I love the title, by the way, Wrong Lanes Have Right Turns. I love the title, but you talk about your own experience going through the educational system and how it, affected you. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, I don't think my experience is uncommon. I think it's a common thing. But when I was coming up, going to school, I was often told by teachers, by leaders, by adults, I would end up in jail. I wouldn't amount to anything. And basically, I think that was not just due to the color of my skin, but really due to not understanding how boys learn. You're told to sit still, don't move. Well, what boy, okay, is going to do that with all the energy that we have, right? Yeah. And so because of that model, that constrictive model, it wasn't conducive for a learning environment for me. So as early as first grade, I was being told that, I couldn't be a lawyer. I couldn't aspire to great things. I was going to end up in jail. And that was the trend for me for a long time until like my senior year in high school. It wasn't until my senior year in high school where an adult in my school told me I was intelligent and I had a shot at going to college.
Wow. I can't believe teachers, I've heard this though, but I can't, it just kind of hits me in the gut when I hear teachers who are supposed to be, you know, outside of your parents, the next set of people to encourage you to live to your fullest potential, but say things to a young,
Yeah.
impressionable mind. And it just speaks to the power of educators. Can you talk about, what role educators have in cultivating that in our children?
Yeah. Educators are really, truly one of the most valuable professions that we have in our society. And there are some amazing educators out there, absolutely incredible and amazing, who really care. But the difficulty comes where you can't teach what you don't love.
Mm.
And if you don't love the children, you don't need to teach the children. If I see education as a calling. And so if you decide to be a teacher, uh, you see that as a calling to shape the lives of young people in a very serious way. So, educators, in my opinion, are kin to ministers, pastors, leaders, in a spiritual sense, because you're really shaping and cultivating those innate gifts and talents that are in our children. And if you don't view it that way, then it's going to be very difficult. And I think the majority does. I really do. You do not go into that profession without feeling that desire to know that you're going to have a lifelong impact on a human being.
Yeah, yeah. With everything going on now with our kids in and out of school, and you know, I really don't think we know the long-term effects of what that's doing to our kids, with the challenges our children have, not just, being a part of the public education system, but being part of it in the middle of a global pandemic. What can be done to change the system, strengthen it, improve it? What are some things, some actionable steps, either from the community or even, from our lawmakers, can be done to improve the system?
That's a wonderful question. They say in every crisis there's an opportunity, and what COVID did for education was to really expose at a national level what inequity looks like, right? Because when you go back 2020, when everything was shut down and there was just virtual learning, you saw some children had access to technology, some children did not. Some children had access to tutors, some children did not. Some parents got together and pulled their resources, which was the actual meaning or definition of education, that we as a society would pull our resources together to educate our kids. But parents who could afford to hire tutors, hire teachers, and develop pods in their backyards, and all the kids in the neighborhood and the parents that contributed had their kids learning during that time. But then you saw the inequitable practice of so many kids not having access to the resources that they need. And we see right now that there is really a I don't want to be, you know, so draconian that there's no hope, but what you see today is that there's massive learning loss across our country because of the out of time kids haven't had in school, right? So what we can do practically, right? What we can do practically is first and foremost fund everything. Okay, this should be an emergency response to this global pandemic, this global health crisis, right? None of our children should be in schools with poor ventilation right now. Okay. None of our children should be in school without the proper PPE, the things that should protect them. None of the teachers should have to come into an environment that's not safe and healthy, right? And so fund that stuff, right? That's a practical thing we can do. Secondly, we can provide tutors, literally, for our children. That can be something that's done at a policy level, um, that really gives those resources to schools and school districts. Because if we leave the districts to themselves, if we leave certain communities to themselves, there's not going to be enough resources.
Right.
So at a federal level, we could really issue an emergency response to say, we're going to make up the gap of the lost time that kids had during this window from 2020 to 2022. And we're going to recruit an army of tutors to help get our kids back on track. That's something that could be done right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like I told you, we are, you know, talking about Dr. King's legacy and some of the things and how it's translated today. What do you think social justice and equity in education look like?
Well, Dr. King asked the question in his last book, and he said, are we going to choose community or are we going to choose chaos? Which one is it going to be? And I think that social justice through the lens of education looks like community. We have to deepen community when it comes to education. And what I mean by that is it has to be intentional. The education of our children must be an intentional act from adults who are more loyal to the children than they are to a system. Right now, we have more loyalty to a system than we do to our children. And so just because there are policies and practices in place that might be outdated, that might not be relevant, that might not fit the culture and the times of today, doesn't mean we have to be loyal to them. We have the power to change them through policy, right? And so every legislator, every school board member, every parent, every community activist, every teacher, we ought to be sitting down together, coming up with the answers intentionally that are the best solutions for educating our children today so that no child, regardless of their zip code, regardless of the color of their skin, regardless of their pedigree, their background, is incarcerated by their zip code. Just because they live in a certain zip code, these are the resources that you have, and this is the education system that you're going to get. That shouldn't be in a 21st century America. It shouldn't be the case.
Well, I want to get more into your book. Can you talk to me about what inspired you to even write and tell this story?
This is, I cannot begin to tell you how excited I am to share my story with the world. And it really comes down to, are we really going to choose community? And that's why I wrote the book. I wrote this book not only just to share my story, which I believe is common. In one place in the book, I say that my story could have been told by a million different people, a million different times, right? Suffering is common. Going through difficulty is common. Trying to pull yourself up and come out of the muck and mire of society, that's a common thing, right? But the question I ask is, why? Why does that have to be common? And what are some of the things that we can do about that to change it? And it requires us to make a turn, right? It requires us to know that perhaps we're going the wrong way and we need to make a turn. And when I saw our country going the way that it has been going, has been trending, we've become so polarizing that even today we're still fighting for voters' rights. You mean to tell me that I have to stand up and fight for the same things my grandparents fought for? That's where we are in this country. And we need more voices. We need more people to share their stories. We need more individuals that are seeking solutions, not just more polarization, but real solutions. And that's why I wrote the book, right?
Mm.
To share a piece of that, to be vulnerable enough to share it because I really felt that somebody needed to hear it. And to understand that that's not my situation is not going to be the plight of every young Black man or young Black woman. Okay. But that plight still exists. But also at the same time, we have the largest generation of college graduated Black and brown students than we've ever had in our society. And that's a great thing, right? So, how do we keep trending in that direction? And what's going to happen is that we have to discover that perhaps we're in the wrong lane, but that's okay. Wrong lanes have right turns.
I love it. So I
Yeah.
just think it's such an empowering message, for parents, with kids and, things and lessons, and for educators too, when they think about the profession. And as you said, it really is a ministry
Yeah,
of such. It really
it
is.
is. It is. It is. And you're so right about our children having agency and power to voice where they want to go and what they want to do, and to have to fight off the soft bigotry of low expectations. It's
Yes.
it's an amazing thing that you constantly have to push that stuff aside and say, no, I can't go after this. No, I can't aspire to be that. Regardless of how difficult it might be or how tough it might be. And it's
Yeah.
amazing how some people will make speed bumps roadblocks. And yeah, that's the truth. That's the truth. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad you're enjoying the book, and it's an absolute pleasure to share it with you, share it with the world, share it with all of Chicago Defenders listeners and readers. Thank you so much.
Can you tell people where they can purchase your book?
Absolutely. It's available everywhere right now for pre-order. You can also go to michaelphillipsbook.com if you want to read a little bit more and get some perks from me. When you go to my website, there's some perks there for you, just free to you that I would love to share. But then on January the 25th, it will be everywhere. Everywhere books are sold, you'll be able to get it in your hands. And I'm so excited about it. And I can't wait for all of you to read it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for talking to the Chicago Defender today. Take
And
care.
thank you. Thank you. Take care.